It all began with a boom. By the time the assembled spanners and riggers of Grodmek's mechworks had discovered the source, it was all but obvious what the solution was. He did it. The combination of the boss's favourite warbike wrecked and burning in the yard, and a grot with a still-smoking blunderbuss standing alone in full view of the now enraged Big Mech was simple mathematics. Simple enough for the combined acumen of a score of desperate underlings to point their collective fingers in unison at the least likely but most obvious candidate. The boss eyed the grot with suspicion. He was in a bit of a quandary. Obviously, given the range of the weapon, the armour on his bike, and the dubious quality of the marksman, it couldn't have been him. But then again, in Orc society mob rules, and the mob was united for once around a common purpose. It was a dangerous thing to go against the tide, Big Mech or not. Grodmek considered his options carefully. What the mob needed, he concluded, was entertainment.
Incredible!
Grodmek announced, assuming the air of a circus master.
A lousy grot, with nothing but a blunderbuss no less, from as far away as this.
Grodmek's deep stride had taken in the yards between them. The little grot now quaked in the shadow of his immense bulk. The Big Mech now flourished the small weapon in his fat hand, obviously a piece of grot junk. He aimed it at the still smouldering wreckage of his prized racer for show, swallowing the urge to smash the little git to a bloody pulp in his thinly veiled fury.
He has somehow,
Grodmek continued, choosing his words with care,
smashified my bestest ride.
His audience agreed wholeheartedly. No way was there any chance that it was any of them. It was that grot for sure.
But can he do it again?
Grodmek eyed them all closely, looking for the unbeliever, the filthy, lousy, sneaking liar, the one who knew it was impossible, the real culprit what done it.
Sure he can!
Grodmek guffawed, shoving the blunderbuss back into the grot's quivering hands. The grot wisely accepted the challenge.
Get fingers!
Grodmek yelled. An orc spanner stepped forward and snapped to attention.
Bring us another bike. Your bike, I means.
Grodmek grinned, relishing the notes of worry on the orc's furrowed brow.
And get a move on!
Grodmek turned to the little grot.
Load it, you git!
The little grot hopped to with a will, turning the barrel end up and rummaging in his pack. He produced a powder bag and poured a large enough amount into the end, grabbed some grass and leaves from the ground beneath his feet, and stuffed them in before tamping the lot down with a rag on a stick. Gitfinger's arrival on his souped-up racer was all smoke and noisy pipes. The mob cheered and he waved, a big dopey grin plastered on his ridiculous face.
Stay right there where we can shoot your fingers,
Grodmek ordered. That wiped the grin off the spanner's gob and put one firmly on Grodmek's. The grot was busy gathering little rocks and grit from the ground. Everything went down the funnel of the blunderbuss. Grodmek, rummaging in his pockets, produced some nuts and bolts, rings and rivets, buttons and bones, all of which were dropped inside and tamped down with great ceremony as the crowd looked on.
Gather round, boys, gather round,
Grodmek announced. He presented the now fully loaded blundergrot.
Now, yous all told me that this here grot with his boomstick was the one which crumped my best speeder.
They all nodded enthusiastically. The grot looked sheepishly at his boots. He'd had nothing to do with it, but he knew better than to argue with orcs.
And if I were on my old bike, like old Gitfingers over there,
the hapless orc waved nervously,
I'd be toast, dead meat, zogged.
The assembled mob agreed, following this simple A to B logic.
So, you all reckons I can be killed by a grot, do ya?
Grodmek noted way too many nods in the crowd. His lofty thinking was evidently leaving them confused. He needed to get to the point fast. It was time to end the charade with a clear demonstration.
Well, feast your eyes, numbskulls,
He shoved the grot forward.
Alright, Blunder, let's have it. Show us your stuff.
The grot primed the firing hammer and slotted a small primer charge into place. He raised the muzzle and took aim. On the other side of the yard, Gitfingers revved his engine and spun his wheels, kicking up a lot of dust and smoke and making as much noise as possible. He raised a hand and gave the grot a stiff set of Gitfingers, his signature move. His adoring fans loved it.
Don't move, fingers, or I'll blast you myself.
Grodmek bellowed over the noise. Gitfingers made no reply. He just shifted the goggles down from his helmet. He didn't expect much from the distant trembling figure, but he was ready all the same. The assembled orcs stared in rapt fascination, fixated on the spectacle, willing the tiny figure to glory.
Blunder, blunder, blunder.
The chant had settled in, deep in their primitive psyches, and it couldn't be shifted until the grot pulled the trigger.
Alright, Wonder Grot.
Grodmek mocked.
Fire!
The blast was incredible. Far greater than an average boomstick blast, stronger than a cannon even, and brighter and louder than an overcharged zap gun. A lance of pale yellow-green warg energy erupted from the weapon's flared barrel, sending shards of metal shot and grit towards the hapless orc target like 100 miniature lightning bolts. Gitfingers disintegrated fingers first in a terrific shower of gore, and his machine promptly exploded on cue. It was gawk-damned spectacular. The crowd lost their gack.
What the zog?
Grodmek was dumbfounded.
Blunder, blunder.
The chant went up anew.
Blunder the Wonder Grot.
Some wise ass yelled, and with that they hoisted up their champion and carried him away to find something else to blow up. Grodmek's mech works emptied as every orc in the place bunked off early. Grodmek almost face-palmed into his power claw. Never a good idea. That wasn't what was supposed to happen. He was supposed to be lording it over those dumb brutes and weeding out the idiot who botched his fuel lines, or miswired the turbo booster, and then blamed the grot. And now his mech works had gone quiet. Not a nail was being hammered, not a bolt bolted, or a rivet riveted. The place was a ghost town. Grodmek stomped back to his abandoned workshop. They'd all be back soon enough, he figured. They'd have their fun and then they'd be bored of it, and that'll be that.
Wonder Grot? Pah!
He scoffed as he kicked a dried squid turd with his heavy iron boot. If he ever saw that little git again. Grodmek squished the turd flat and didn't give it another thought.